Good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. Welcome to today's Live with Liz. I'm so glad that you're here because I really shouldn't be alone following the election results last night. Not healthy for anyone because we still don't have any real election results. So here we are, Wednesday, hump day. Let's switch gears from that nonsense and focus on something good for business, like improving slideshow presentations, which maybe this topic for Live with Liz seems a little basic, like every law firm already has it. Lawyers have been through so much education at this point. They've learned about presentations. You maybe don't think you need this. You do. Absolutely. You need to improve your slideshow presentations. Everyone can. And it's also good to go back to basics every once in a while and figure it out. So why am I covering this? And it's partially because I have seen so many presentations over the years that need to have information like what we're going to talk about today that I'm compelled to share with you. It is also because now that everyone is digital and now that we're all in this virtual world, we're doing a lot more presentations, and these mistakes that you saw from the 1990s, wow, unfortunately, they still are here with us. So it's an important topic. You really want your communication to shine. You want your services to stick out. You want the subject matter that maybe you're teaching to really come through when you're giving a presentation. And there are a lot of ways that if you make mistakes throughout your presentation, that message will be distorted. It could be just something where you're inconsistent and people will glaze over. So that is why this topic is super important today. Slideshow presentation. Anyone who knows me, who has ever spoken to me about slideshow presentations may have heard me reference this rule that I learned in college. And I think everyone should think back to their college days and really focus on the good parts, but also this rule that is super simple when it comes to slideshow presentations. It is from a guy. His name is actually Guy Kawasaki. He is Hawaiian, which also makes him super cool. And interestingly, he used to be with Apple, but he has worked with Canva, which is a platform that we recommend free. Well, it has a free access for marketing and design work. And so this guy who came up with this rule is still part of our lives, and that's awesome. The rule, wait for it, is the 10-20-30 rule. What does that mean? Okay. And is it still relevant? Because I just mentioned that I learned it in college. Is it still relevant? So I would argue, yes, it is still relevant. It is difficult for lawyers and law firms to incorporate this rule. But it's a great starting out point for pretty much anyone. And if you are not sure what your presentation should look like, this is a place to begin. Hey, Leah, good morning. Awesome to see you. So the 10-20-30 rule, what are these numbers? What do they mean? Well, this is a way to keep it simple. Yeah, 10 slides. So you don't want to overwhelm your audience. 20 minutes. Presentations should not drag on and on and on. And 30-point font. That is so people can actually see it. Now, maybe that last part is not quite as relevant as it once was because you were giving these slideshow presentations in person. People in an auditorium were looking up at a big board and they couldn't see what was on the screen. Nowadays, your presentation might be viewed on a computer. Actually, the chance that it's viewed on a computer is really super high. So maybe that 30-point font is not quite as relevant. But the concept here that you're focusing on the visual, that you're giving people a simple message, that you're consistent throughout your presentation, those all still apply. So the 10-20-30 rule from Guy Kawasaki is a great place to start and a good tool for having some marketing content and some really great resources when it comes to what to include and what not to include. That is Canva. Guy works there or has worked with them, and that's awesome. Now, when it comes to slideshow presentations, there are some mistakes that I have seen over and over and over again. The lack of consistency, this is fairly general. Formatting mistakes, not proofreading your work and actually presenting with errors. All of these things speak to who you are and what services you're providing. And I'm going to judge you and your services based on this presentation. So you want to make sure that you get it right. There are some other issues like People who still use clip art, come on, that was 1990s. Don't use clip art anymore. And the lack of consistency from one slide to the next is really easy to overcome now in ways that it wasn't a long time ago. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, formatting these presentations is super complicated, I don't have time, I'm just going to throw it up there, it is worth it to learn just a few tips and tricks to make your life easier and make your presentations awesome. So what are we going to do there besides just following the 10-20-30 rule? So there are, at least in some of the platforms that are out there now, some design tools that are automated that you can actually just go in and have them recommend what your slides should look like. That is true in PowerPoint now. You don't have to do the work. It does the work for you. It's brilliant. Well, one of these things that those automated tools does is give you kind of this template feel to your presentation. And that template is really important. Most law firms nowadays that are giving presentations have a template for you to follow. Some of them are dated. If yours is, that template needs to be updated. Sometimes you don't have an actual template yet, but you should. So you want to keep it simple to be able to prepare your slideshow presentations without much effort each time. Have a template ready to go from a design perspective that includes the basics. You want your website on it somewhere maybe. You want your master slide, that beginning slide for your introduction. You want your ending slide to have your contact information. Those you want ready to go all the time so that all you have to worry about is the actual meat of your message and your communication. Now, I think some of the other mistakes that people make when they're putting this information onto slideshow presentations, actually the two biggest ones for me are putting way too much content on a slide, too many words to get through that I don't immediately see your message and I have to actually spend time reading it. I might as well read a book or something, not a presentation, because you've missed the point. So too much content is a big, big problem. And then another problem is just it not being visual enough, and maybe you put graphs or statistics that are super complicated, that those images are what I'm left with, and I don't get a clear message from them either, because I have to really focus and concentrate on what that image is trying to convey, rather than having something simple and clean that is immediately understood. Perhaps it's better then not to include that complicated chart or graph and to focus on the result instead, and maybe provide an image related to the result. Now, something that I see that there are some cultural differences when it comes to presenting information, coming from people who are not American, and this is, so obviously as an American, there are certain things that are dear to me that are not dear to others, or that are just looked at in a different way. Not that one is right or wrong, but for better or worse, if you're presenting to an American audience, you probably should be aware of them. I, for example, as an American, want the message to be direct, concise, clearly understood, and I don't want you to waste my time, right? These are my expectations. But even my other native English-speaking people from other countries have different attitudes when it comes to communication, like presentations having more flowery language, which to me is just sort of a waste of time. Now, there are these lists that I see and repeated over and over again from people. I love my Brazilian family and my Brazilian friends and all of my Brazilian former colleagues and hopefully future colleagues, but a lot of them do this and make the same. For me, it's a mistake, but I'm guessing that there's some cultural value into the way they present information. But if you put together a bullet point list, and that bullet point list uses check marks and periods and a hyphen before you put the content behind each bullet, I'm going to delete your presentation and we're going to have a chat, because that's not effective and it needs to stop. So keep it simple. Bullet points should be actual bullet points. You can use something like a little picture of flower, whatever, but just use one little thing. Otherwise, I'm going to get confused by what I'm seeing. Also, that check mark, I think, might mean something different there than it does here, because for me, if you're using a check mark, you've completed a task, and this isn't just something that you need to be looking out for. It's done. So get rid of the check marks, check mark period hyphen thing, and use just a clean bullet point list. That's what we all want, right? So the takeaway here, the important things to remember are that you want to be concise, you want to be direct, you don't want to waste anyone's time, you want to be consistent in your messaging, and you want to be clean with it, and visual over content written is really the way to go. It's important to think about your audience and who's reading it. So recently I did a huge PowerPoint presentation, not by myself, thanks Leah. And the organizers of what we were presenting had some concerns that we weren't going to give all of the information that was necessary, because I wanted to keep the messaging on the screen more minimal. I didn't want to include every word on the screen, because to do that was going to overwhelm the slide, and it was going to make it complicated for people to take away what I was actually saying. So in the end, what you can do is really learn how these presentations work. Spend some time with whatever platform you're using to understand whether you can use notes and read from your notes, or at least work with the notes to have them in front of you when you're presenting. And then that way you don't have to have all of those words on the actual slide itself if people are going to be taking this away. If you really want people to take home the content that you're giving after your presentation or have access to it, then maybe create a separate document, maybe create an infographic or something that goes along with the presentation to email to them later, rather than have it take up the slide. Now, there is something else that I've been noticing when people give the actual presentations, and I've been noticing this from an IP organization that is really doing an incredible job at churning out content and making it available to people and giving people a spotlight. When they're on one of these virtual platforms and they go to start the presentation, then they don't put it in presentation mode. And so I can see all of the edits, and I can see not the full screen of the slide as they're giving the presentation, and that is incredibly distracting. And I just want to reach out to the person presenting and say, click the presentation board, start the actual presentation. So just check yourself. Once you've got the content right and you're ready to go, practice. Make sure you know how to hit that presentation board. Make sure you know how to get it started. Make sure your transitions look good. Make sure that any last minute errors are corrected. That's super important. You don't want to just go live with something that you think is okay before testing it out. Now, sometimes there's not enough time to do that, and you just have to wing it. So in these times where you're not fully prepared but still have to do it anyway, you can wing it. You can do it. I've been there. I understand, and it makes sense. Now, if you want to have a slideshow presentation revised or curated just for you, for your firm, for your team, and have some of them ready to go, either having a master template that you can use anytime, or having something specific to promote your firm or to teach something, you can come to Firm Forward. We will help you with your presentations. We will go ahead and revise it for you, make sure that it's perfect, collaborate with you to make sure it's what you like, and that it sends the right message. That there are ways to do this where you're not alone. Isn't that great? Send your questions to solutions@firmforward.com or hit us up with a consultation. We'll work with you to get it done right and to get your messaging across. And, hopefully tomorrow will be a better day for all of us, and we'll all get some sleep after this crazy, crazy political time here. And we'll do things like focus on slideshow presentations and making them awesome, rather than the mess of the world that we live in with COVID-19 and all of our other woes. So good luck, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. See you next time on Live with Liz. Bye.